Mateu always knew that the world wasn't waiting for him. It wasn't a calm kind of silence that soothes it, was the kind of absence that eats away at your soul, where no one sees you, no one hears you, and no one cares. As a baby, he was left on the doorstep of a shelter like a forgotten package, and from temporary home to temporary home, he learned early that life could be harsh, ruthless, and cold. By the age of 10, he had already experienced more abandonment than many people do in a lifetime. He had no family, no home, no expectation of care. Every day was about survival, reading signs of danger, spotting food before seeing it, calculating moves to escape the violence lurking around every corner. He learned fast, not because he wanted to, but because he had to. The days were long, and the nights even longer. Under the awning of a closed-down store, wrapped in a tattered blanket found in the trash, Mateu dreamed of simple things: a warm bed, a hug that wasn't pity, a genuine good morning from someone who truly cared. But the city of glass and concrete ignored his existence. Cars sped by, restaurants wasted more food than Mateu could eat in a month, and people looked away as if he were an unwanted shadow. Each step on the icy sidewalk reminded him of a world that didn't see him, and every gesture of indifference reinforced the feeling of invisibility. On the other side of the city, Alexander Moonhouse wore tailored suits, negotiated millions in glass-wall boardrooms, and lived surrounded by luxury. Widowed since his 40s, he had turned grief into coldness, cutting family ties and pushing friends away. His life was efficiency, profit, and silence, leaving no room for feelings. Little did he know that, on that rainy afternoon, everything would change, and the invisible boy would be the key to unlocking a door long closed inside him. Rain poured down heavily, reflecting on the asphalt like shattered mirrors. Mateu, a plastic bag slung over his shoulder, barefoot and soaked, was scavenging cans but determined. Every step was calculated, every movement was survival. Alexander, meanwhile, left the company headquarters, late for a business dinner, impatient and absorbed in numbers and strategies. He got into his armored car and, without looking at the driver, ordered take the expressway. Faster. The car surged forward, ignoring the rain, the risks, and the chaotic traffic. As Mateu watched the flooded streets, he noticed something wrong. A luxury car was speeding too fast around a curve. Within seconds, he heard the muffled scream, the screech of tires, and the dry crash of metal against stone. The car plunged into the river, submerging quickly. Mateu dropped the cans and ran, slipping through the mud to the edge of the embankment. Murky water swallowed the vehicle, taking with it the man screaming in desperation. Without hesitation, Mateu jumped in. The icy cold and the strong current tried to overpower him, but he swam with everything he had. He saw Alexander trapped inside the car, banging on the armored doors. Mateu grabbed a rusty iron bar, dove back in, and struck the glass until he created a gap just big enough to free the man. Water rushed into the car, and he pulled Alexander toward the shore with the help of two pedestrians. The man coughed up water, shivered, barely able to breathe, but he was alive thanks to the courage of the boy no one had seen. In the days that followed, Alexander couldn't stop thinking about Mateu. An invisible boy alone had saved his life. He asked his team to track cameras, security footage, anything that could give a clue about the boy. Finally, on a cold early morning, the black car parked quietly near a suburban bakery. Mateu was wrapped in a thin blanket, lying on cardboard, eyes closed, breathing deeply. Alexander approached slowly, taking in every detail of the boy: his wounded feet, scratched arms, dirty chin. "Mateu," he said, his voice trembling. The boy awoke, startled, instinctively recoiling. "I didn't do anything wrong, sir. I just did what I had to." Alexander knelt, eyes locked on his. "You saved my life. Now it's my turn to see you, hear you, and give you what you deserve. A life worth living." Mateu hesitated, but there was something different in the man's gaze. It wasn't charity. It wasn't pity. It was a promise, care, respect, dignity. And in that moment, the silence that had enveloped his life for so long broke. He cried. Alexander cried too. Two separate worlds met there, united by one act of courage and another of redemption. Months later, Mateu had a comfortable home, access to education and health care, but most importantly, He was treated like a son. Alexander had changed completely, becoming present, affectionate, and seeing life through new eyes. Together, they founded the Mateu Institute of Hope, sheltering street children, providing food, housing, schooling, and love. Over 2,000 lives were transformed, but the real impact was measured not in money, it was dignity and belonging. In the following days, Mateu began to feel something he had never known, a sense of belonging. Before, every corner, every street, every temporary shelter was just a place to survive. Now, every corner of the Institute seemed to embrace his soul. He could walk to the halls without fear, talk to adults without hesitation, play with children without worrying about judgmental eyes. Every act of kindness he received and gave fueled him to keep going. The pain of the past remained, but now it had become strength. Each night in his warm bed, each morning greeted with a genuine good morning, reminded him that there were people willing to believe in him, not just his courage, but who he truly was. Alexander watched the boy with quiet pride. He had grown in a new way, learning to value time, empathy, and the real impact of human actions. Yet some days, the weight of the past still struck him. Memories of a lonely life and ruthless decisions surfaced, and he questioned whether he truly deserved the redemption Mateu seemed to offer freely. In those moments, he realized that, although he had saved the boy physically, it was Mateu who had saved him spiritually. He was learning to love in a way no advice, book, or business experience could teach through action, courage, and heart. One morning, Mateu walked through the Institute's garden, watching children engage in reading and painting. He approached a small boy sitting alone, shoulders slumped, eyes down, holding an old, tattered book. Mateu knelt, looked into his eyes, and said, "That looks like a good book. Want to tell me the story you're reading?" The boy lifted his gaze, surprised, as if no one had ever really cared. Slowly, he began to speak. Every word carried years of silence, loneliness, invisibility. Mateu listened carefully, feeling in his chest the responsibility not just to save lives, but to restore souls. With each sentence, the boy felt safer, more important, more alive. Meanwhile, Alexander faced unexpected challenges in his personal transformation. Society, accustomed to seeing him as a cold, distant businessman, began to question his changes and decisions. Business partners resisted his social initiatives, suggesting he focus back on profits. But Alexander, now guided by values he never imagined having, resisted. He knew that the real measure of his life's impact wouldn't be contracts signed or bank numbers, but the number of hearts touched, the future transformed of the children Mateu had inspired. On a particularly cold winter day, a child arrived at the Institute, eyes wary, large, tearful. She had wandered the streets for weeks, without family, without food, without hope. Seeing her, Mateu felt a tightness in his chest, as if reliving his own past. He approached carefully, offering a blanket and a warm smile. "You're safe now. You can stay with me and the others. Here, no one will ignore you." The child looked at him, hesitated, but finally allowed herself to trust. This seemingly simple moment carried the weight of years of pain transformed into hope. The Institute slowly gained visibility in the city, and eventually across the country. Journalists, activists, and politicians began to take notice, impressed by Mateu and Alexander's dedication and results. But with visibility came criticism and bureaucracy. Some questioned whether a boy and a former businessman could manage such a large project. Mateu, however, remembered the river, the cold, the hunger, and how courage could move mountains. Alexander reminded him that every obstacle was just another step to prove that the impossible can become possible. They learned to face resistance with patience, strategy, and above all, love. Every planning meeting, every volunteer conversation, every moment with the children was a lesson in humanity, proving that small actions can have enormous consequences. One afternoon, Mateu visited one of the youngest children at the Institute, gravely ill from diseases contracted on the streets. He sat beside the boy's bed, holding his small, cold hand, and said, "I know you're scared, but it's going to be okay. We're here to take care of you. You're not alone." The boy squeezed Mateu's hand, and for a moment, everything seemed to stop. Mateu felt the same certainty he had felt when saving Alexander, that every life matters, that each act of courage can be the difference between hope and abandonment. Alexander, watching from outside, felt silent pride and a deep reverence for the strength of the boy who had once been invisible but now shone. Over time, Mateu began giving talks at schools and social events, sharing his story with thousands. Each story carried not only the drama of abandonment, but also the power of resilience, courage to act, and the importance of empathy. Children, teens, and adults often listen with tears in their eyes, inspired by someone who, despite everything, refused to give up. And every applause, every word of recognition, wasn't just about Mateu, it was about every invisible child, every ignored life now given a chance to be seen and valued. Alexander, in turn, noticed unexpected transformations in himself. He became more patient, attentive, and human. Where once there had been cold calculation and logic, now there was genuine emotion, compassion, and empathy. He realized that true success didn't come from power, wealth, or fame, but from the positive impact one could have on the lives of others. And every action of Mateus, every recovered smile, every transformed life reflected not only in the Institute, but also in Alexander, showing him that redemption even lately is possible and profound. The Institute grew, gained new locations, welcomed more volunteers, and began serving thousands of children. Mateu and Alexander worked side by side, facing financial, logistical, and emotional challenges. But every difficulty was met with determination, courage, and love. They learned that transforming lives requires not just resources, but dedication, presence, and empathy. Every night, when Mateu returned home reflecting on the day, he felt deep satisfaction, knowing he was fulfilling his purpose, that the courage of an invisible boy had sparked a wave of hope touching thousands of lives. Then came Matea's greatest challenge, yet a group of newly arrived children, scarred by street violence, refused to trust any adult. Mateu knew it wouldn't be easy. Every gesture needed care, every word carefully chosen. He sat on the floor among them, looking into their eyes not as a savior, but as an equal. I know you're scared. I was too, but I'm here to walk with you. No one will make you feel invisible. Slowly, as if sensing they were in the presence of someone who truly understood, the children began to open up one by one. Mateu felt a familiar mix of responsibility and hope, the same he had felt when diving into the river to save Alexander, now multiplied by dozens of children finally believing they could be seen. Alexander, watching from outside, felt a lump in his throat. He knew there was no human power that could buy this, to trust the hopeful gaze, the smiles forming on previously closed faces. This was pure, genuine. He realized that Matea's true legacy wasn't just saving lives physically, but awakening courage in each child, teaching them that even invisible, they had worth, strength, and the right to dream. Over time, the Institute became a national reference. Children who had once been lost, nameless, or invisible began to study, create, play, and dream. Mateu saw in each face a piece of himself and all the children he had never seen but always felt missing. He understood that every act of courage had a ripple effect, touching hearts and building futures. Alexander, meanwhile, became not just a mentor or protector, but a true father, someone who understood that love and dedication are priceless, and the impact of a transformed life resonates endlessly. The story reached its climax at an international social impact ceremony. Mateu, now 15, stepped on the stage in a simple suit, carrying in his eyes the strength of someone who had faced the world and won. He spoke of abandonment, hunger, and fear, but also of courage, empathy, and the power of love. I was once just an invisible boy, hungry and afraid. Today, I'm someone who saves, because love always saves. The audience rose, moved. Alexander, in the front row, wept not in sadness, but in gratitude, grateful for being saved not just physically, but in his soul, by the boy who risked everything to change everything. In the months that followed, Mateu and Alexander consolidated the Institute, helping over 2,000 children rebuild their lives. They showed that courage, love, and action have real power, that small acts can have enormous consequences, and that no one is invisible when someone cares. Every smiling child, every story of overcoming, was a living reminder that humanity still exists, even amid indifference. And now this story reaches you. If it touched your heart, if you felt every emotion like this video, share it with friends and family, and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories that remind us courage and love always save. Comment below who would you help if you had the chance today. What action can you take now to change the life of someone no one sees? Remember, the world needs invisible heroes, people who see beyond what the eyes showing you could be that change. Mateu taught us that even in the harshest circumstances, a willing heart can change everything. Alexandre showed us that it's never too late to learn to love and make a difference. Together, they prove that courage, empathy, and action can transform lives and build legacies that money or power can never achieve. So choose to act, choose to see, choose to love. Because every life you touch, every child you save, every heart you transform is a seed that blooms forever.